Tadparam Paryaya Vidmahi Jnanalingeshwaraya Dhimahi Tanno Guru Prachodayate Om. Om Yogamaharishi Dr. Swami Gitananda Giri Guru Maharaj ki Jai. Om Puduvai Kalimamani Puduvai Shakti Yogacharini Ammaji Meenakshi Devi Bhavanani Guru Mata ki Jai. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. Namaste, Vanakkam, Swagatam, Bonjour, Buongiorno, Buonasera, Buonanotte, Huya, More, Boreda, Kia Ora, Salamat Pagi, Ayu Bovan, Ayushman Bhava, Shubh Dinam, Suprapad, Salom. Welcome to yet another scintillating Saturday. In this part of the world, fabulous Friday for those in North America. And today, we are looking at the most amazing center, the brow center, the Agnya Chakra. A center that enables us to be human. Because to be human is to be able to have the power of choice. To be human is to care and share. To be human is to be able to be a giver, not a grabber. When we talk about these chakras and we come up from the Mooladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipuraka, Anahata and Vishuddha, these first 5 centers are the spinal centers. So the energy that is flowing in the spinal centers, be it Mooladhara with the 4 petals, Swadhisthana with the 6 petals, Manipura with the 10, the Anahata with the 12 and Vishuddha with the 16. All of these centers, the energy is moving clockwise, with the center of the axis being our spine, which is the Meru Danda Brahma Danda. So the central spinal axis, within which lies the most important of the nadis, the Sushumna Nadi. In Tamil literature we call it Sulumunai Nadi. The Sushumna Nadi, the royal path. The royal path that enables us to move from the base of the spine to the top of the head, and that unipolar energy, the only unipolar energy in the universe, the Kundalini. It enables that Kundalini, that Maha Kundalini, Kundali Shakti, to move, breaking through the 3 Granthis. The Granthi called Brahma Granthi, the Vishnu Granthi, which is at the Mooladhara and the Manipura. Breaking through these Granthis and creating that beautiful path through which the ascent of this energy is happening, from the base of the spine to the top of the head. And then, when you want to come into this highest level of union of Shiva and Shakti, you have to come through that Granthi, Mahadeva or Rudra Granthi, which is said to exist according to the Lalita Sahasranama at the Agnya Chakra. There are other teachings that say it is at Vishuddha and some teachings that say it is at Anahata. All these 3 Granthis are being pierced as the energy flows up, above and out. Now in this central axis, the energies are flowing clockwise at Mooladhara, at Swadhisthana, at Manipura, at Anahata, at Vishuddha. But then suddenly there is a shift in consciousness. There is a leap, a quantum leap from the clockwise spiraling of energy to suddenly an energy pattern that has no spiral here but is moving left to right, left to right, left to right, left to right, left to right. And that is why the whole energy flow of the Agnya is different than the energy flow down at the other 5 centers. These 5 centers, the lower 5 centers, are related to the Panchamahabhuta, earth, water, fire, air and ether. They are related to the Tanmatras, that is our sensory experience, which is the subtle element. So we experience smell, we experience taste, experience sight, experience touch and experience hearing. All the Tanmatras that are coming through the Jnana Indriyas, the sensory apparatus of the nose, the tongue, the eyes, the skin cutaneous receptors and the communicatory receptors of the ear. And then the Karmendriyas, the action senses, or rather senses of action. The senses of action that include the locomotion, the capacity for experiencing dexterity, experiencing the sense of excretion, experiencing the sense of procreation, reproduction, and experiencing the sense of communication. So all of these correlates with the Panchamahabhuta, with the Jnanendriya, with the Karmendriya, with the Tanmatras. All of these associations are there in the lower 5 centers. Mooladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipura, Anahata and Vishuddha. So all of these are related to the sensory engagement. And when we get into this sensory engagement, we tend to fall into the trap, into the web. And that is why it becomes the Indriya Jala. The Jala, the web, the snare, the maze of the senses. And this is why the lower 5 centers are centers that are common with us and other living beings. So any other living being that can hear, see, taste, touch, all of these qualities are there. Those 5 centers are active in them also. So then what distinguishes those living beings from us human beings? Human beings, not subhuman doings. What is it that distinguishes? The distinguishing characteristic is the power of choice, the power of discernment called viveka, and the power of being objective towards your own subjective experiences called vairagya, metacognitive capacity. The capacity for metacognition, the capacity for discernment, the capacity to make our own informed choices and then be responsible for them, that is what makes us a human being. Anything less than that, we are a subhuman doing. So the energy flows of the lower 5 centers were in the clockwise direction, spiraling. Suddenly you come to the Agnya and you have the 2 petals. The 2 petals. And suddenly the energy moves from left to right, left to right, left to right, left to right. There is this movement of energy now in a horizontal position instead of being spiraling. So it's not that you go round and round the 2 petals from left to right, that is the energy flow. And this is why the 2 petals of the Agnya signify the 2 hemispheres we have. The 2 hemispheres we have in our brain, the human brain. The bicameral human brain, having these 2 hemispheres, the left and the right hemisphere. The left hemisphere more focused on quantitative aspects of our life, and the right hemisphere more focused on our qualitative aspects. So the quantitative and qualitative, Lakshmi and Saraswati, these 2 parts of the brain, the right and the left hemisphere, they are such important components in us manifesting our humaneness. And that is why the Ajna Chakra is where we start to rise into our humaneness. We rise above our subhuman tendencies, which are brought out with the lower centers. We now come into the capacity to rise above the sensory web. We move from being caught in the sensory web, the Indriya Jala, we move into what Maharishi Patanjali calls Indriya Jaya. And this is why we move from being instinctive to being intuitive. Big leap. The instinctive behavior is the lower 5 centers. And then suddenly you move out of being instinctive and you move into a state which is intuitive. Instinctive to intuitive. The lower 5 centers have a lot of reactivity. We are reactive. And we need to move from being reactive to a state of being responsive. So instinctive to intuitive, reactive to responsive, and normally we are very reflexive. Somebody is good to us, we are good to them. They are bad to us, we are bad to them. Eye for an eye, poke your eyes out. It's all this reactionary behavior. It is all reflexive. But you are moving now into reflective. Instinctive to intuitive. Reactive to responsive. Reflexive to reflective. This is the leap of consciousness between the lower 5 centers and the Agnya. And that is why its energy moves in such a drastically different manner as compared to the lower centers. This is why it gets its name, Agnya. Jna refers to the gnosis, knowledge. The knowledge that we have got from all our sensory inputs. Your eyes tell you, Dr. Ananda is on the screen. Your ears tell you, yes, he is there, his voice is there, along with the crows and the dogs and the monkeys and all that make sound. Now, it's tough to feel the person when they are so far away, but sometimes we can feel ourselves and each other. Of course, I hope you are not tasting me by chewing me up. I hope you are not chewing me up and tasting me. We are having all the sensory experience. And we want to move from the sensory experience that holds us in its trap. And we want to move into a state where we are beyond the senses, Indriya Jaya. This is why that Indriya Jaya is one of the attainments in the Vibhuti Pada. You have the Bhuta Jaya, where you master all the senses, all the elements, and you come into Indriya Jaya. Of course, there is Pradhana Jayascha, where even that causal force of Prakriti, you go beyond it. Because yoga is all about transformation and transcendence. So here the process of transformation was through the lower centers, and now you are transcending it. Transformation, transcendence. That is why the Agnya Chakra is where you are transcending the common information that we are cognizing. The Jna is the root of gnosis, knowledge, gnosis, jnana. And so we are having all this sensory information that we have put together to know about the world in which we live, and then you have to transcend it. You have to go beyond the knowledge. You have to go beyond all these inputs, and you have to go into that state that has transcended all of this by going beyond the Jna into the Agnya. Now, one has to be very careful with these terms, because normally when you put an A sound before a term, it means the opposite. So normally if you have the term Jnana and you put an A before it, it becomes Ajnana, which means wisdom to ignorance. So you have to be very careful there that you don't confuse this with a center that is an ignorant center. Agnya here does not mean ignorance. It refers to transcendence. There is a transcendence happening here where you are transcending the information. You are going beyond the information into a state of intuition where you are now not bound to the reactionary, reflexive, instinctive behavior anymore because you have tapped into something higher. There's a leap. It's a leap from, across your big chin. And more importantly, your big nose. Our nose is our ego. We put it every place, especially where it's not wanted. Putting your nose into other people's business, You have to transcend this chin and the nose to get up here. There's a big leap. The Agnya refers to a center where you are tapping into the universal source rather than the mere information that is a sensory motor reaction basically. You hear the dogs barking and so you go and say, hey, shut up. This is all at that level. But then you go beyond the dog barking. You go beyond the crow cawing. You go beyond Ananda talking. You transcend it. And that is why at this center suddenly there is a huge leap of consciousness. People are always trying to find that missing link. Where is that missing link? Is it the Yeti in the snowman, Yeti in the high Himalayas? Everybody wants to find that missing link. The missing link is the leap between the Vishuddha and the lower centers, Vishuddha and Agnya. This leap is the missing link. Because the moment we as a human being were able to move from the spinal cord mentality, the worst insult Swamiji could give anybody was to call them a spinal cord mentality. Because spinal cord mentality means you are locked in being reactive, reflexive, instinctive. You have not become human. That's the meaning. Spinal cord mentality, Swamiji would call it. And he would say, Amma, I would say, Swamiji, that person is just, really, really a pain. And he said, why are you worried about them? They're just a spinal cord mentality. They have not outgrown those primitive urges, the primitive tendencies, which are our samskara vasana. And this is why all traditions, it doesn't matter what tradition, all the Vedic traditions have emphasized the importance of this region, which is why we place the kumkum, the bindu here. It is a bindu, that is why we place the kumkum here. Because this is reminding me that I need to keep focusing on my Agnya, and it is reminding you that you need to focus on your Agnya. So when you see my kumkum, you are reminded, and when I see yours, I am reminded. We are reminding each other, focus here, be human. Focus here, be human. Focus here, be human. Focus here, be human. It is a constant reminder. And this is why all the Vedic traditions said focus on this region. They called it the Bhru Madhya. Madhya means the middle point between the eyebrows. Bhru Madhya. Bhru middle. They call it the brow center. Brow center. The Bhru Madhya is the external point. Now from here you have to go in a few inches. And if you go in a few inches, you come to an area where you have what is called the Agnya Bindu. So this is the Bhru Madhya Bindu. You can refer to my series on the Bindus I made during the pandemic. There's a whole series. There's a playlist of that on the YouTube channel. Bhru Madhya is the externalized focus point. A Bindu is a focal point of consciousness, lying at the junction of the Vijnanamaya and Manomaya koshas. We are focusing on the Bhru Madhya as the starting point, and then you go inward a couple of inches and you come to a point which is called the Agnya Bindu. So the Ajna Chakra has within it an Agnya Bindu, a focal point of consciousness within it. And this Agnya Bindu, the physical correlate, the physical sort of locus here is the hypothalamo-pituitary axis. They are the pituitary and hypothalamus. They have the beautiful relationship. The hypothalamo-pituitary axis That is the exact physical correlate. I'm not saying it's the Agnya Bindu. I'm saying it's a physical correlate because the Bindu lies at the junction between the Vijnanamaya and Manomaya Kosha. It is subtle. It is in our Sukshma Sharira, the subtle body, not the Stula Sharira. The Stula Sharira, the physical body, the correlate to the Bindu is the hypothalamo-pituitary axis. This is a couple of inches from here. So when you focus on the Bhrumadhya, you can go internally. It becomes a physical map for you, like a Google map. It is the physical mapping so that you go in a few inches and you come to the Agnya Bindu, which is a central Bindu in the Ajna Chakra. So the Ajna Chakra is representing the energy flows of the two hemispheres, right and left. And within it, it has the Agnya Bindu that represents the energy flowing through the hypothalamo-pituitary axis that enables all your psycho-neurophysiology to manifest. The psycho-neurophysiology. Because all your emotions, all your thoughts, all your cognitive processes, they influence your hypothalamus. They influence the hypothalamus that then influences your whole endocrine system, your immune system, your autonomic nervous system. All of this, your autonomic nervous system, sympathetic, parasympathetic, your pituitary gland and all the glands that then are under its control, and your immune system. All these three most vital aspects of you are governed by the hypothalamic signals. That is how important the hypothalamus is. So all traditions say focus on this area, the brow. Let your mind focus there. Let your mind rest there. Because as you start to contemplate it, what is happening? Your mind, which was very, very dull, moodha, very, very distracted, kshipta, partially distracted, vikshipta, starts to come into a state of one-pointedness, which is called ekagrata. The mind which was sarvartha becomes ekagrata yo. From all pointed, it becomes one-pointed. When you focus your mind here, what is happening? Yato manat tata prana. Where the mind goes, the prana flows. And you start to create a beautiful, mentally guided, mind-guided energy flow into this vital region. That vital region that enables us to be the best version of ourselves. That enables us to be a human being. As a human, you're supposed to be. Now, when you look at the development of the brain, thank you, Deolalji, for that pointer. When you look at the way the brain develops, it is actually a long tube. Many people think the brain and then the spinal cord. No, it's the spinal cord and then the brain. And it is from down upwards it develops. It's not top down, it's down up. When this long tube is developed, it's called a neural tube, tube of nervous tissue. Neural tube, then it closes on itself. Cavities are formed inside. And as it grows, the top part, that part, the caudal part, what happens is it starts to grow bigger and bigger, and inside you have these cavities which become the lateral ventricles. So the lateral ventricles are the cavity region, and the brain that develops around it becomes your hemisphere, your cortical hemispheres. So when we talk of the two hemispheres, the lateral ventricles, which are the hollow component within it, are part of that energy, because in that hollow region moves the cerebrospinal fluid. There's a beautiful movement internally of the cerebrospinal fluid that moves from the lateral ventricles, the third ventricle, the fourth ventricle, coming up and down your spinal cord through the gaps that are there in the meninges. A beautiful flow is constantly there of about 150 milliliters of fluid, cerebrospinal fluid, moving up and down, in and out and around. This whole beautiful cerebrospinal fluid circulation is an energy flow in itself. Because wherever there is a flow, it means there is prana. If there is no flow, it means there is no prana. Flowing prana. That is why all the nadis, a majority of them are given names of rivers. Because the way the water flows in the river, the prana flows in the nadis. So these two hemispheres are very, very important. If you are totally in the left brain, you're always calculating, always analytical, and you never really experience life because you are so focused on what time did the sun rise, what time did it set, that you forget to experience the sunrise and the sunset. The right brain is very great in experiencing the sunrise and sunset, but if somebody said, what time did it rise, you have no idea. Because it focuses on the quality of the experience, not the quantitative, numerical, analytical aspects. So it is not that, if you're left brain dominant, it is great for you, or right brain dominant, it's great for you. We actually want to be balanced. And that is why there is a bundle of fibers connecting your right and left hemisphere, the corpus callosum. Colossal binding. Corpus means a body that is huge. Because the fibers are so many, because the right brain wants to know what's happening in the left, and the left needs to know what's happening in the right, so that they can start to create balance. Yoga is all about balance. The fringe elements can never be yogic. The extreme can never be yogic. Yogic is always moderation. Yogic is always middle path. Yogic is always balance. Yukta, mita, these are words you find. Yukta ahara viharasya. You have the word like mitahara for the food. It has to be balanced. So this balance is why practices for this region focus so much. The pranayama practices like the alternate nostril breathing are amazing to balance these energies of the right and left hemispheres. Swamiji has suggested that the Shirsasana and the Kapalasana as practices for the Agnya. Now normally people think of the headstand as being for Sahasrara. Swamiji has actually suggested them for Agnya because when you start to stand on your head, you start to reorient your whole psychoneurology. The whole psychoneurology and physiology changes. Psychophysiology changes completely when you stand on your head. And the balance is more on the front, not the center. In the headstand, the balance is more on the front actually. You are starting to focus your energy towards this prefrontal cortex. And as you already know, prefrontal cortex, because that is the most important part for your working memory. It is important for you to analyze, reason. All these qualities that come from a higher place are part and parcel of your prefrontal cortex especially. This is why it is so developed in human beings compared to all the other primates. The human prefrontal cortex is so well developed because we are to use it, okay? We are meant to use it. Now most people don't use it. And the very simple universal law is, if you don't use it, you lose it. Disuse atrophy. We need to use it. How can you use it? By all these contemplative practices. People today, they have split everything. They talk about yoga and meditation. I find that very odd. Very odd. Because meditation, dhyana, is an integral component of the antaranga, the inner aspects, the higher aspects, the Raja Yoga aspects, the samyama of yoga itself. But because for them yoga is just physical exercise, they separate it. It's even worse, people separating yoga and pranayama. I'm like, weird. Even in India, you find people, okay, in our class we'll do yoga and pranayama. I'm like, seriously? Because yoga has become synonymous with asana. That is the problem here. So all these contemplative practices, I don't even want to call them meditative, okay? When in the morning after Arati, we would sit on the rooftop here and Ammaji would lead us in the morning class. The 15 to 20 minutes at the beginning, before the sunrise, we would be sitting there. No, Amma never called it meditation. Amma always called it contemplative sitting. What a beautiful way to express what it truly is. Contemplative sitting is actually what most people think is meditation. Meditation is a state of being. Meditation is not something you do. Meditation is something that manifests. You can contemplate, you can concentrate, you cannot meditate. It's a total misunderstanding that today we talk about meditating. You can concentrate, you are concentrating, yes. Most of the so-called meditative practices today are concentrative, contemplative practices and lot of visualization, imagery practices. The true meditation, dhyana, occurs when you have prepared yourself and it manifests on its own. You cannot grab it. It's like the mirage in the desert. You are there and this looks like water. As long as you are from a distance, it looks like water. When you get close, you realize there's no water. See, it's like that. It has to manifest on its own. You cannot grab it. The more you try to grab the experience, the more it will slip through your fingers. And this is why contemplative sitting, concentration, that can enable us, the dharana, that can then enable us to move into a state of dhyana. All of these practices focus on this prefrontal. There are not too many practices that I know of where you focus on the side of the brain or the back of the brain. You don't find. The two things you find, tip of the nose and the brow. These are the most common calls to contemplation that you find. Because you want to strengthen this. You want to strengthen this area because right in front of this area, there is a zone. That zone is called the Chitta Akasha. The Chit Akasha. It is the space of consciousness. Here you had the Akasha with relation to Vishuddha. Akasha Tattva. This is Chitta Akasha. It is the space, the domain of consciousness itself. Chitta Akasha they call it. Chit Akasha, when it comes together, Chitta Akasha. Chitta Akasatil Adbhudagamara. In that beautiful space of light, Sadananda Tandavam, Shiva is dancing his eternal dance of bliss. I have goosebumps as I even think of this. That Chiddakasha, where there is the dance of consciousness. The power of transformation, transcendence, Lord Shiva dancing as Nataraja. Sadananda Tandavam. Beautiful dance is happening. Chiddakasha. When we contemplate the Agnya Chakra, we find that one of the symbologies there is Ardhanarishwara. This is the form of Shiva that is half Shakti. The right part is where you have Shiva, the masculine. And the left part is where you have Shakti. That is why when we talk of Shakti, we say Vamapaga Shayane. That she has taken the left side of Shiva. The left half is Parvati, the right half is Shiva. This is a very common description of Ardha, Nari, Ishvara. Nari means woman. Ishvara is the Lord, Ardha, who is half woman. A very beautiful concept of the hermaphrodite energies that are there. You know, in fetal development, we are all essentially, we start off as female. Then at one point, if we change into male. If not, we continue female. We all start female in the womb. This is a part of embryology. We start female. This Ardhanarishwara is where we start to understand these equal and opposite energies. Right and left brain, equal and opposite energies. Right? Now, this energy that is there, the Ardhanarishwara, is an energy that tells you that there will always be the dualities and you need to transcend the dualities. So Agnya Chakra is where you become aware of the dualities in order to transcend them. At the lower 5 centers, you had no idea there are dualities because you never were able to watch them from above. You were so engrossed in the dualities, you didn't know the difference. But in the Agnya Chakra, you can now see from above, you realize there are the dualities, the dvandvas. And then you say, I want to move beyond the dvandvas into that state called dvandva atita. You have gone through the gunas, you want to go from that saguna into nirguna. This is where you start to have these higher concepts. You start to contemplate the higher life. You start to see everything from a much higher perspective. Till then we were locked in it. We were locked in conditioning. Now you can move beyond conditioning, beyond the samskara, beyond the vasana. And you can start to have a truly objective vairagya based perspective that will enhance your discerning viveka to make the choice that is needed in the moment. Now this is if you work on it. Now if you don't work on it, disuse atrophy. And then you don't use it and you lose it. And then come back again another million times to start using it. Why wait for another lifetime? Let's do it now. Let's get into it now. Let's start to contemplate this region. Let us try to strengthen our humane qualities. Rather than be subhuman, move into that humane, and realize you, every one of us, you, me, every Tom, Dick and Harry is potentially divine. Now Tom, Dick and Harry may not know it. And with that comes responsibility. With power comes responsibility. With great power comes greater responsibility. This is why this is the center associated with responsibility. What is responsibility? The ability to respond in an appropriate manner. Till then you were reacting. Now you can respond in an appropriate manner. You strengthen your ability to respond and you grow in responsibility. This is why this center Agnya is so much to do with responsibility. It is related to the mind element. Above the 5 senses, above the 5 action senses, you have that super sense called the mind, the manas, the 11th sense as it is often called, or the single sense, Ekendriya. It is called Ekendriya, the single sense. And you start to tap into it. Now, Swamiji has suggested that this has a mandala. The mandala is an orange circle. So in a 3-dimensional form, it's a juicy orange that you're going to make juice and drink. This orange circle is the Manas Mandala, sometimes called Mano Mandala. Manas Mandala, Mano Mandala sometimes is called. And when you want to contemplate it, you do what is called Manas Mandala or Mano Mandala Pranayama. And here you create a circle of energy from the base of your spine to the brow center. So now what happens here is the visualization is as you breathe in, the energy moves up your right side to the brow center, down the left to your base of spine. So you make one complete circle clockwise here. From the bottom to the top, back to the bottom. And then as you breathe out, you reverse it, coming from the bottom anti-clockwise to the brow center, anti-clockwise back down. So there is an energy moving up clockwise, down clockwise. As you breathe out, up anti-clockwise, down anti-clockwise. So there's a whole circle being made on the inhalation and on the exhalation where there is this big mandala, a beautiful orange circle being created in your visualization as you contemplate this energy. The Manas Mandala Pranayama, the Kapalasana, Shirsasana, especially in the Kapalasana, Shirsasana, to bring your legs into a locked position. Padmasana, there is a very good practice to lock the energies and bring the energies down into this prefrontal cortex area. So the prefrontal cortex, the hypothalamo-pituitary axis that enables us to manifest the best of ourselves, all of these are related. Now the bija mantra of the chakra itself, often people are putting the sound Om, but because we are working on a continuation, we use the sound of A, not O here. So the sound that we use here is Ang, A, Ng. So like the becoming the Ang. When we are chanting the bija here, it is the sound of So it's not Om here. Because the Om becomes the Sahasrara in our system because we are using that 7 parts, not 6 parts. When people stop at 6, they put the Om here. But in this system, the Ang comes as the bija mantra for the chakra itself. The Dhara bija is Ang. And then the left petal, Hang. And the right petal, Kshang. Now when you see it on a wall or a t-shirt, and if you are not careful, you can get confused because you think the Hang is on the right and Shang is on the left, and lot of people confuse this. Because they just look at it and they end up with a mirror image. You have to sit in that image. The image that is on my poster, you will see it. You are sitting in that image, and Hang is on your left, Shang is on the right. And so the energy flow is of a Hang, Shang, Hang, Shang, Hang, Shang, Hang, Shang, Hang, Shang, Hang, Shang, Hang, Shang. And this flow of energy is right, left, right, left, right. It's across, it's not circular. Here the energy flow between the petals, the 2 petals, is horizontal, back and forth, 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 which is very important. You are sitting in that. All these mandalas, you are sitting in it and Hang, Shang. Because otherwise there's a lot of confusion, Mugs, lot of confusion, because people are looking at, as an image that is pasted on something. They don't realize you are in it. When you are in it and it's all around you. It's all around you. You are immersed in it. And this energy, Hang, Shang. These practices enable us to focus here. Other practices like the Prana Kriya are very excellent to work on this. We have described the Prana Kriya totally separately in full session. It enables us to really focus on this and settle into that Agnya Bindu. When we start working on the Agnya Chakra, we overcome the imbalances. We manifest that Ardhanarishwara, who is that oneness that has transcended the dualities and come into a state of that highest oneness. Moving from duality to non-duality. From Dvitiyam to Ekam is so important. So important that what happens is that you are elevating yourself into that higher state of consciousness. I wish that we can all elevate ourselves into this. Let that Agnya Chakra function at its optimal level. Let us connect to it as efficiently as possible, because then truly we will start to live as we are meant to be as human beings, striving to manifest our humane qualities and striving to attain that inherent potential divinity that lies in each and every one of us. May you all be blessed, and may you be a blessing wherever you are. Keep the flame glowing bright wherever you are. Every one of us is a light. Be the light onto yourself, be the light onto others. Have a wonderful weekend. See you next weekend. And till then, enjoy being who you are, because you are the best you. No one else can be you. So just be the best version of yourself and fulfill your dharma. That is why we are here. Dharmartha kama mokshanam chaturvida purushartham. May the highest consciousness bless you forever. Hari Om Tat Sat.